Hi, everyone. Welcome to Right Riches Talks. I'm Lale Hancock, and today I'm joined with my two partners in crime, Chatissa Bowman
That's right.
and Steve Bowman. Thank you guys for joining us. Today, we're actually talking about one of my favorite topics, and it's being in service or being of service. And I was just sharing how much this is a question I ask actually every single day with the different things that I'm doing or am being, to get even more clarity for me of, hey, which one am I being right now? So, Chatissa, this is one that I've heard you talk a lot about over the years. So what is it to be in service versus of service?
First, I like to say that being in service and of service is not just about work. It's about relationship. It's about being parents. It's about being in business or working for someone else.
It can even be about interacting with some furniture or having things in your life. Are they in service or of service? Yeah.
It's a state of being that you are in. If you want people to be in service to you, you expect people to do all kinds of things, from projection, expectation, and judgment, and from obligation.
When you're expecting people to be in service to you, then you will always have judgments about how they should or should not do something, and you will always get upset when they don't do what you'd already decided they should do, even though you haven't told them or yourself what it is that they should do. But when they do something, you tell them that's not what it was that you expected. Now that's being in service.
If you have so much expectation and judgment and projection with people, they feel obligated, and they would resist and react and refuse to do it.
When you're functioning from the space and the energy of service, you're always looking at, well, what else is possible? What needs to change here? What creation can I create? How is this going to look in a way that everyone is actually a contribution?
You just being there, wishing well for all, and invite them to be with you and to want to do things for you from choice, not from obligation.
So it's a very different energy to it. And the really nice thing about this is if you tap into the energy of being of service, then the things you say start to change. The things you do start to change. That energy of service is you're always looking for a way to actually create the change that's required. And even if that change is not saying something or not doing something or doing something or saying something, you will know if you tap into that energy of being of service.
Wow, you guys described it so beautifully. Thank you for that. It is, but how many people, no matter what their role is in an organization, no matter what their role is at home, go into that space of obligation instead of that space of choice? And I know if anyone's been listening to us in any of the other shows, we talk a lot about choice and how each of us has infinite choices we get to pick from, and that we actually have the choice to change anything. But I hear this all the time, whether it's I'm talking to CEOs, whether I'm talking to a housewife. There's something there about obligation. So what can we share with the listeners so that they know they actually have so many choices available, and they do have a choice to be in service or of service when they'd like to contribute to someone?
I actually have one good example that I think most of us could relate to that, particularly as women whose mother. But it's also related to everyone who have mother, to know what the energy is like. And I'm sure we all have mother, so we know what that energy is like. So the thing is, most mother have a lot of expectation, projection with their children. Like, we want them to call us, we want them to do this, we want them to do that, want. And it's just like we have a lot of mother buy into this reality that it's our children. We want them to be a certain way.
To call me every now and then.
To call me every day. Those are the in-service. Everywhere that we function as a mother, with the projection, expectation, and judgment that our children has to be whatever we want them to be. We are functioning from in service, wanting our kids to be in service to us. So what would it be like to be a mother and function from off service?
So give some examples of how you've done that with our daughter and the being of service and what that's created in her life and our life.
Well, I think I have a unique daughter anyway, that she would refuse to be in service to me. So that's not too difficult in the first place. She will never allow me to even try to create any obligation in her universe. So she's trained me to never create the in-service to her, because she will let me know that.
Jutissa and Sheridan, our daughter, have this business that they work in together. It's a boy-free zone. I'm not allowed. I just carry bags and do things like that. But the key thing with that is that the reason that they're able to work so exceptionally well together is that they're of service to each other, not in service. So Sheridan is not in service to this being that she calls her mother, and Jutissa is not in service to this being called her daughter. They're of service to each other. Now, what I've observed as a father, watching from afar on this, is that they almost never argue. They almost never get extremely irritated with each other, just a little bit every now and then, but not much. But they're over it very, very quickly because they're willing to be of service. But it's not being of service to the other person. It's just the energy of being of service. And it could be to Jutissa being of service to Sheridan, but also of service to the business and of service to the clients and of service to whatever it's required. The being in service, we've noticed with a lot of people, is where they are trying to control things rather than exploring the possibilities of what other things might look like. Of service is incredibly powerful for any business because it enables you to explore different relationships, different business opportunities. That's a lot easier. So that was one of the examples.
So what's your example, Lale? I'm sure you have so many, particularly you are working with so many people globally.
Yeah, it's interesting though, when you said that, actually the first example that came to my mind is my twins who are 21 in college. And I look at just the relationship we've had and this honoring of service to each other, which is very different than the way I grew up with the guilt of what I had to do and how much I'm actually applying that in my own life now, you know? But it is like, I do get to work with different people across the globe, different personalities, different strengths, different ideas. And one thing I'd like to add to this is the word allowance. You know, I think a lot of times, especially as leaders, we do know what's worked for us to kind of get us to where we are. And sometimes we would like the people that work with us to also do it the same way, or maybe not exactly the same way, but we tend to have similar paths that they take. And the thing of service, it really is, you have no idea what the other possibilities are until you include people and you actually honor them for their awareness and their ideas and their creativity, and allow them to really flourish by you not rejecting it, by you being totally open to listening to the different perspectives and different possibilities, and then going from there. One thing of service that I've also found is you not giving up on you and your awareness during that time period. Because you might work with some really brilliant people, but it's not about you taking your energy out of it or your awareness out of it, but it's to include all these other possibilities in it and all these other creative ideas. So I've got to say, it's, you know, some places versus others, some projects versus others, it's also a lot easier to remain in the of service. And the habits when certain people are doing certain things, just to want to jump in and micromanage it, and have to actually ask a lot more questions during that time and be like, okay, actually, what is this going to create? And what awareness are they going to receive if we just allow them to continue going down this path?
And the important message that is if we are in the project, if we are in business, that something needs to be delivered to the clients, to the customer, then as a leader, you have to be willing to make a call on the thing that needs to be done, but not from the energy and the space of in service, but from the space of inviting people to be more aware of what required to be achieved. And I think that can come from the space of service. If you have a team or your team in the communication together, and everyone in the team know that we are going to be working together from this space, and you can introduce that energy of in service and off service to them so they know that as well, because it's two-way thing, in service and off service, because you might function from off service to your staff, but if they function from in service to you, it's a space of...
Right, it's a space of conflict and a space of disharmony more than anything.
So if you're going to create the team to do some project, and if you would like to introduce this notion of in-service and off-service, and not functioning from obligation, projection, conclusion, and judgment, then I would invite you to introduce this whole philosophy to your team and have a discussion together about what does it mean to be in service? What does it mean to be off service? And what would be a benefit for people to function from off service instead of in service?
The other thing that I would add to that too, and it's not just about people as well, because that's very powerful when you're dealing with people, but you can actually be in service to your business or of service to your business. So people that feel that they're in service to their business hate doing the accounting. They don't like sending out invoices. I've got to do this because the business says that I have to do it. Being of service to your business would look at it from saying, okay, so how can we make this easy? Who needs to do this? It does need to be done, but what are the most expansive ways of doing it? It's a very different energy behind it. If you're in service to your business, you feel you have to fill in the dots, have to do this, do that, do the other. You have to market. You have to do this. You have to go out and do all your book work. You have to, all these have tos, because that's what being in service to my business means. If you're of service to your business, you'll actually ask your business, what do you require to make this both easy to grow and easy for us to attract money to a space that is actually really creative?
And what about being in service to your client? How can we do it from the space of off service to them?
That's a great question. Actually, when you first said that, I came up with an idea of where I was being in service to one of my clients a couple of years ago, and how much friction that actually created in my world, and everyone quit on her. So when you first said that, that's the first thing that came up, is what actually happens when when we're in an environment of in service versus of service.
I wonder who created the space of in service and off service when we have a client, particularly when you're a consultant. Do you want to talk about that, Steve? Because
one of my favorite topics.
You deal with a lot of people who demand you to be in service to them.
It's interesting though, when you say that, I'm like, yeah, they do, but then it changes.
Oh, I wonder why it changes, Lale.
I'm like, that doesn't stay that way. Yeah.
And the great trick in all of this is, if you're willing to be of service, then you cannot be, or others cannot treat you as if you were in service to them. And so, for example, it does change, but the reason it changes with you, Lale, is that you are living and breathing the of service energy. I will be of service. Now, please get this, folks. It does not mean that you're a doormat. It does not mean that you do what everyone says. Being of service to someone could, in fact, be saying no to them, because that creates greater change. That creates greater possibilities. We had one not that long ago, and in fact, I just got an email from him this morning, a CEO of a major health organisation, and he'd already decided how he wanted to do this big merger and acquisition. And the chair and he wanted to interview me. Well, first of all, I don't do interviews. I'll have a conversation, but I don't do interviews. But I don't tell them that. They can call it whatever they like. So anyway, we set up a Skype meeting, and before we went in there, I just reminded myself to be an allowance, have no point of view, and to be the energy of service. And as a direct result of that, the things that I said during that meeting turned this CEO around to the extent where he said, wow, that was one of the most strategic conversations that we've had. I really like your point of view. Now, the interesting thing was I had no point of view.
Yeah.
And what he was really saying is that he liked the fact that I had no point of view and I could look at something and do that to it, just tweak it around a little bit. Now, that's being of service, because what that created in his world, and more importantly, in the world of his organisation and the 3 million people they serve, is a different possibility for creating the future. This is so powerful, folks, that you can actually, by being of service to one individual, can have an impact on the lives of 3 million.
If you are a consultant and if you're going for a job and if you need that job, you have the neediness and you must have that job, what energy, space, and consciousness are you projecting? Are you setting up for people to perceive and receive already? If the client thinks that you are needy and you really desperately need that job,
you're already in service.
You're already in service to them and to the project already. So as a consultant, and if you are going to go for a job, you have to be willing to let go of the need to have that job. You have to be willing to let go of the projection, expectation, and judgment, and anywhere that you're coming from obligation to anything.
And by job, we mean the job of mother, the job of daughter, the job of whatever you've decided is a job. That's what we're talking about. Be willing to have no point of view about what that will look like.
The space of no obligation.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't feel obligated to anyone, and if you have no conclusion, expectation, and judgment about how anything's supposed to be, you already open yourself being in the space of service.
You guys are amazing. As we wrap up this one, I think Chatissa has already shared what the next Right Riches Talks is going to be. We're going to talk about being the choosing one versus the chosen one. So thank you guys for joining us today for Right Riches Talks with the two Bowmans and Lale Hancock, and we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.